There's a particular kind of pain that comes with feeling invisible in a world that values connection. A woman with no friends often walks through life with a quiet ache, wondering if she matters, if anyone truly sees her. It's not because she's unworthy or unlovable, it's because life, circumstances, and perhaps even past hurts have isolated her. But here's the truth. Solitude is not a sentence, and being alone doesn't mean being powerless. In our hyper-connected world, we're led to believe that our worth is tied to the size of our social circles, the number of messages we receive, or the invitations we get. But those numbers don't define you. Your worth is not diminished because your phone isn't buzzing or because your weekends feel quieter than most. You are enough, just as you are. Loneliness is a profound and deeply human experience, one that has touched countless lives across all ages, backgrounds, and circumstances. It isn't simply about being alone, it's about feeling unseen, unheard, and disconnected in a world that often seems to celebrate togetherness and connection. Loneliness doesn't discriminate. It can affect someone surrounded by people just as much as it can impact someone physically isolated. It's not a sign of weakness or failure. It's a reflection of the intrinsic need we all have to belong and to be part of something greater than ourselves. In today's fast-pairing, digital-first society, the loneliness epidemic has grown more pervasive than ever before. Ironically, in a time when we can communicate with anyone, anywhere in the world, at the touch of a button, meaningful connection has become harder to find. Social media, while designed to bring us closer, often creates a facade of connection. It allows us to present curated versions of our lives, but it rarely fosters the deep, authentic relationships that nourish the soul. Instead, it can magnify feelings of inadequacy and isolation as we compare our behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. The effects of loneliness extend far beyond the emotional realm. Research has shown that chronic loneliness can have serious physical and mental health implications. It can weaken the immune system, increase stress levels, and even contribute to heart disease. Mentally, it can lead to anxiety, depression, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness. The toll it takes on well-being is a stark reminder that humans are inherently social beings. Connection isn't just a luxury, it's a necessity. But loneliness is more than an individual challenge. It's a societal one. It's the product of cultural shifts, economic pressures, and changing family dynamics. As communities have become more fragmented and traditional support systems have weakened, more people are left to navigate life's challenges on their own. For many, this isolation becomes a self-perpetuating cycle. Loneliness begets more loneliness as the energy and confidence required to seek connection are sapped by the very condition itself. The loneliness epidemic is not just a reflection of individual experiences, but also a symptom of deeper societal changes. As the world grows more interconnected, paradoxically, people often feel more isolated. Urbanization has pulled many away from close-knit communities, replacing them with transient and impersonal interactions. Family structures have shifted, with more people living alone than ever before, and the traditional support systems that once anchored individuals have become less prevalent. Adding to this is the increasing role of technology in shaping human interaction. While it offers incredible convenience, it has also created barriers to genuine connection. Virtual conversations, though frequent, lack the depth of face-to-face interactions, the subtle nuances of human contact, the warmth of a smile, the comfort of a hug, the shared silence between friends, are often lost in a sea of notifications and instant messages. The result is a growing number of people who feel alone, even in crowded rooms or bustling digital spaces. Loneliness also carries a social stigma that makes it difficult to address. Admitting to feelings of isolation is often misunderstood as a sign of weakness or an inability to fit in. This stigma forces many to suffer in silence, further deepening their sense of alienation. It creates an invisible wall that prevents people from reaching out, not because they don't want to, but because they fear judgment or rejection. For those caught in the grip of loneliness, the effects can be devastating. It can distort self-perception, making individuals feel unworthy of connection or convinced that their isolation is inevitable. Over time, this erodes self-confidence and creates a cycle that becomes harder to escape. People may withdraw further, avoiding social opportunities and reinforcing the very feelings they long to overcome. Yet amidst these challenges, the loneliness epidemic also highlights an important truth: the deep, universal human need for connection. It reminds us that everyone, regardless of age, background, or circumstance, seeks to be seen, heard, and valued. And while loneliness can feel overwhelming, it is not insurmountable. There is hope in the simple acts of kindness, in the courage to be vulnerable, and in the power of small, genuine efforts to build bridges where walls once stood. The loneliness epidemic is not just an emotional struggle, but a profound challenge that infiltrates all areas of life. It can affect the way people see themselves, the decisions they make, and even their physical health. When someone feels lonely, it's not just the absence of social interaction that hurts. It's the internalized belief that they are isolated in their experiences, that no one truly understands or cares. This belief can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the fear of rejection prevents individuals from reaching out, leaving them trapped in a cycle of withdrawal and despair. Culturally, we often celebrate independence and self-reliance, which can unintentionally reinforce the stigma of loneliness. People are encouraged to stand on their own 2 feet and figure it out, creating an environment where asking for help or admitting feelings of isolation feels like failure. This pressure to appear strong and self-sufficient pushes many into hiding their struggles, leading to a silent epidemic that thrives in the shadows. The impact of loneliness extends beyond the individual, seeping into communities and workplaces. Lonely individuals often find it harder to engage meaningfully in group settings, which can lead to miscommunication, decreased collaboration, and a sense of disconnection even in environments filled with people. Over time, this can erode the social fabric, making it harder for communities to function cohesively and for relationships to thrive. On a personal level, loneliness can feel like a weight that's impossible to lift. It magnifies self-doubt, making people question their worth and whether they deserve the connection they long for. This mental toll often leads to feelings of hopelessness, making the path out of loneliness seem daunting. It becomes easy to convince oneself that it's better to stay isolated than to risk vulnerability or potential rejection. But even in the face of these challenges, loneliness reveals something important about human nature. Our intrinsic need for connection is not a weakness, it's a strength. It's a sign of what makes us human, the desire to share, to belong, to be part of something larger than ourselves. Recognizing this need is the first step toward finding a way forward, a reminder that loneliness, while deeply painful, is also deeply universal. The loneliness epidemic isn't always loud or visible. Often it exists quietly in the background of people's lives, unnoticed by those around them. It can affect anyone, regardless of how successful, outgoing, or busy they appear. Loneliness isn't about the number of people in your life, but about the quality of your connections. It's entirely possible to be surrounded by friends, colleagues, or family and still feel an aching sense of isolation if those connections lack depth or authenticity. This silent struggle is compounded by the modern world's relentless pace. People are often too busy with their own lives to notice when someone around them is slipping through the cracks. The pressure to constantly be on and maintain an image of happiness or productivity can make it harder for individuals to admit when they're struggling. Social media plays a significant role here, where curated lives and highlight reels can leave people feeling as though they're the only ones dealing with isolation, even though it's a shared experience for many. One of the most insidious aspects of loneliness is the way it can alter how people view themselves. Over time, the absence of meaningful interaction can lead to feelings of unworthiness. Someone might start to believe that their loneliness is a reflection of their value, that they aren't interesting enough, kind enough, or deserving enough to form deep connections. These internal narratives are incredibly damaging and can create barriers to reaching out, further entrenching the isolation. The physical effects of loneliness are just as profound as the emotional ones. Chronic loneliness has been compared to smoking in terms of its impact on health, increasing the risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, and a weakened immune system. The stress and anxiety that accompany loneliness can compound these issues, creating a cycle that feels difficult to escape. It's not just an emotional or social challenge, it's a public health crisis. And yet, even in the depths of loneliness, there is the potential for change. Humans are resilient, and the desire for connection is a powerful motivator. Loneliness, as painful as it is, also holds a mirror up to what we value most. It reminds us of the importance of relationships, of being seen and heard, and of sharing life's moments, both big and small, with others. It's a signal, not a permanent state, urging us to take steps toward rebuilding connections and rediscovering the joy of belonging. The loneliness epidemic often goes unspoken, hidden behind polite smiles and casual conversations. It's a quiet struggle that can permeate every part of life, leaving people feeling disconnected even in the midst of crowds. Loneliness doesn't announce itself loudly. It sneaks in, filling the spaces where meaningful relationships should reside. It whispers doubts, convinces individuals they're alone in their feelings, and slowly chips away at their confidence and sense of self-worth. What makes loneliness so challenging is how deeply personal it feels. Even though millions of people experience it, loneliness often convinces its sufferers that they're the only ones struggling. This isolation isn't just physical, it's emotional. It's the sense that no one truly understands, no one genuinely cares, and that reaching out might only lead to rejection or indifference. These fears become barriers, reinforcing the very isolation they want to escape. Modern society has created an environment where loneliness can easily thrive. Busy schedules, digital distractions, and the loss of traditional community structures all contribute to a world where meaningful connections are harder to find and maintain. The shift toward virtual interactions, while convenient, often lacks the depth and intimacy of face-to-face connections. A like or a comment on social media can't replace the warmth of a conversation shared over coffee, or the comfort of a friend's presence during difficult times. For many, loneliness is compounded by the societal stigma surrounding it. Admitting to feelings of isolation is often seen as a sign of weakness or failure. People feel pressure to appear strong, independent, and socially successful, which makes it even harder to reach out or ask for help. This silence creates a feedback loop, where the fear of judgment prevents action, and the lack of action deepens the sense of isolation. The effects of loneliness are far-reaching. It influences how people think, feel, and behave, often leading to self-doubt, sadness, and a diminished sense of purpose. Over time, it can even impact physical health, increasing stress levels and the risk of chronic illnesses. The weight of loneliness can feel overwhelming, making it hard to see a way forward. The loneliness epidemic is a quiet storm that affects countless lives, often without notice. It's not always visible, nor does it announce itself with dramatic gestures. Instead, it lingers in the background, affecting how people think, feel, and interact with the world. It's a subtle, pervasive weight that colors daily life, making ordinary moments feel harder and joyful experiences seem muted. Loneliness isn't simply the absence of people, it's the absence of meaningful connection, the sense of being emotionally or spiritually untethered in a world full of noise. The roots of loneliness are as varied as the people who experience it. For some, it comes from life transitions, a move to a new city, the loss of a loved one, or the end of a significant relationship. For others, it's the result of long-term patterns where the demands of work, family, or other obligations have edged out the time and space needed for deep connections. Sometimes loneliness stems from inner struggles, insecurities, past traumas, or the fear of vulnerability. Whatever the cause, the experience is universal. It touches people from all walks of life, no matter how outwardly successful, social, or composed they may appear. In today's fast-paced world, loneliness has found fertile ground to grow. The pressure to perform, to achieve, and to maintain a perfect image often leaves little room for genuine relationships. Technology, while a tool for connection, can also isolate. Scrolling through social media feeds, people see snapshots of others' lives that seem so full, so connected, and so far removed from their own. This comparison fuels feelings of inadequacy and reinforces the belief that everyone else has figured out how to belong, except them. Loneliness also affects the way people interact with themselves. It becomes a lens through which they view their worth and potential. The absence of connection can lead to self-doubt, with thoughts like, "What's wrong with me?" or "Why can't I find my place?" These feelings can spiral, making it harder to reach out or open up, even when the desire for connection is strong. Over time, loneliness creates walls, barriers that feel insurmountable but are built from fear and misunderstanding. But even in the depths of loneliness, there is a glimmer of possibility. Loneliness, as painful as it is, speaks to the very human need for connection and belonging. It's a sign of what truly matters: relationships, shared experiences, and the feeling of being part of something larger than oneself. Recognizing loneliness is the first step toward addressing it. It's an invitation to reflect, to reach out, and to create moments of connection that may not erase the feeling entirely, but can begin to lighten its weight. The loneliness epidemic is an experience that touches millions, yet it remains one of the most misunderstood aspects of human existence. It is not just the absence of people, but the absence of connection, understanding, and shared meaning. It's a quiet struggle that can make even the most mundane tasks feel heavy, turning a simple morning routine into a reminder of the void that lingers in the background. Loneliness is not about being physically alone, it's about feeling emotionally untethered, as though the thread that binds us to others has been cut. This epidemic thrives in a world that increasingly values speed over depth and appearance over authenticity. People live their lives in the fast lane, juggling endless responsibilities, leaving little room for genuine human connection. Social media often amplifies this disconnection, presenting a facade of togetherness while leaving users feeling even more isolated. Eric, the carefully curated images and captions create a false reality, one that can deepen the ache of loneliness by making people believe they're the only ones struggling to find their place. What makes loneliness so insidious is its ability to create a spiral. The more isolated someone feels, the harder it becomes to reach out. Fear of rejection, judgment, or misunderstanding keeps them from taking steps toward connection, while the absence of connection reinforces their sense of unworthiness. Over time, this cycle chips away at self-esteem, making the prospect of seeking companionship seem not just daunting, but impossible. Loneliness doesn't just affect emotions, it impacts the mind and body in profound ways. It can heighten stress, disrupt sleep, and contribute to mental health challenges like anxiety and depression. Physically, loneliness has been linked to an increased risk of heart disease, cognitive decline, and even premature death. It's a condition that affects the entire being, showing how deeply we are wired for connection and belonging. The silence surrounding loneliness only adds to its weight. Many feel ashamed to admit their struggles, fearing they'll be perceived as weak, broken, or unworthy. This stigma prevents open dialogue, leaving individuals to grapple with their feelings alone. Yet the truth is that loneliness is a shared human experience, one that crosses boundaries of age, culture, and circumstance. It is not a flaw or failure, it is a reminder of what it means to be human. Loneliness, as painful as it is, holds within it an important truth. It reflects our innate need for relationships and community. It's a signpost guiding us toward what we truly value. While the path to connection may be challenging, it begins with recognizing that loneliness is not a permanent state, but a call to action. By taking small steps, whether through reaching out, joining a group, or simply being present for someone else, we can begin to reclaim the sense of belonging that lies at the heart of what it means to live fully. Loneliness is a profound challenge, but it also serves as a reminder of our shared humanity and the universal need for connection. It's not a reflection of weakness, but a call to seek deeper relationships, to nurture compassion, and to build communities where everyone feels valued and seen. Though it may feel isolating, loneliness is not insurmountable. Small acts of vulnerability and courage can create ripples of connection that change lives, not just for ourselves, but for those around us. Remember, no one is truly alone in their experience. The path to belonging begins with the belief that connection is always possible.